Hi, my name is Charlie, and today I'm going to show you how I made my own First Nations longbow. Here, I am drawing the design out onto the wood that I've picked. I picked maple, as it was traditionally used by the First Nations here in BC to make bows. Other woods that would have been used would have been juniper and yew. Those were used by First Nations from Hope. Basically, you would have wanted to use a hardwood. That way it would have had more flex, but it wouldn't have actually held the shape that you bent it into. Here is the template that I used. When I got the wood for my bow, I actually ran into a problem where the wood was only 1¼ inches thick instead of the 1½ that I thought it was. So I had to change the design so that the middle part, which is supposed to be 1¼ is actually 1 inch, and then the 1½ is actually 1¼ Here, I'm using the bandsaw to cut out the shape of the bow. The pulse saw is what would have been traditionally used. So when I'm cutting it, I'm going to be leaving extra room along the curve. That way when I go back with the pulse saw, it'll look as if it was actually carved, not cut out. Here, I'm using the spoke shave to start carving the bow. You want to make sure that the spoke shave's blade is nice and sharp. If it's not, then you'll probably want to sharpen it to make sure that it's the nicest cut that it can be. Did you know that it would have traditionally taken a First Nations 2 to 3 days to make a complete bow? Here, you can see that I've started working on the body of the bow. Make sure to get it nice and smooth and nice and curved. You'll want to remember that when the First Nations were originally making these, they were making these more as an art than actually as a tool. This would actually have lasted them for years to come. Now I'm starting to sand the bow. An interesting fact that I found was that the First Nations would have only worked on their projects when they were not stressed or angry. They would have done this because the first of anything that they made, they would have given away as a gift. And you want it to be given away with a pure heart. You can now see me laying down string along the spine of the bow. This is to help give it strength. Normally sinew would have been used, but given the fact that that comes from animals and I don't go hunting, I had to just use string instead. This is going to help when the bow is bending. It's going to help act as a spine along the back of the bow so that it won't bend as far and it'll reduce the possibility of cracking. Now you can see that there are 4 strings going along the length of the bow. This will give it the extra strength that it needs to be able to shoot the arrow. Here I am adding a handle to the bow. Traditionally sinew would have normally been used, but instead I'm going to be using leather lace to make the handle. Now I've started stringing the bow. The red string that you see is the bow stringer, while the right string is the actual bowstring. You stand on the stringer to help lift and bend the bow into the shape so that you can then slide the bowstring onto the bow. The bow is now done. There's only one thing left to do. Test it, of course. The arrow landed past the rugby posts. In the video, you can see that I'm wearing safety glasses and gloves. This is because of the fact that you've made a weapon that is not store-bought, so you have no idea how it's going to perform. This way, if it does suddenly snap, it's not going to injure me too seriously. So there you go. That's how far it shoots, and that was not even full draw. With full draw, I probably could have gotten it to the other side of the field if I wanted to, but given the safety problems that probably would have had, I decided not to. That's the end of me making the bow. I hope you enjoyed watching the video.